Good evening. The head teacher of a secondary school in Wiltshire, where nearly 300 students have been told to self-isolate for 2 weeks, says she's devastated to send pupils home. Anita Ellis had to follow Royal Wootton Bassett Academy's most drastic COVID measures after a pupil tested positive for the virus there. It's the latest school in our region to send a whole year group home as a precaution, which means more online learning. Karen Bell sent this update from the school earlier.
As until yesterday morning, nearly all the pupils were here at school as normal. It then transpired that one of the Year 9s had tested positive for coronavirus. And so, on the advice of Public Health England, the school sent all of Year 9 home to self-isolate for 2 weeks. Now, as with most schools, year groups here are social bubbles that don't mix with other bubbles. So that means that although Year 9 has had to self-isolate, luckily the other 6 year groups have been able to come to school as normal. Nonetheless, though, a huge number of children and families are affected by this. Back to school, but for some pupils it's straight back home again. Just 8 days into the new term, 284 Year 9 students from this academy are self-isolating. One of them has caught coronavirus while travelling abroad.
So if you just measure this section here...
For DT teacher Joanna Ferguson, it means some improvisation, recording a lesson on her phone to email out to the Year 9s. The school is determined that their learning will carry on at home, but of course it's not quite the same. We're in a kind of ghostly classroom here. Do you miss them?
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, it's been a really... it has been a really emotional experience, yeah, because you become a teacher because you want to help out students. So, yeah, not being face-to-face with them is really, really hard.
Royal Wootton Bassett is one of 4 schools in Wiltshire who've had to send whole year groups home. St Augustine's in Trowbridge sent home 160 pupils last week after one of their Year 9s tested positive. The pupils have to self-isolate for 14 days, but parents are told only to have a child tested if they show symptoms. For Anita Ellis, head teacher at Wootton Bassett since Easter, coronavirus has added a huge burden to her already busy job. She's not only responsible for the education of 1,800 pupils, but also a long list of COVID recommendations. Sending whole year groups home is one of the most drastic measures on the list, and one she'd hoped to avoid.
You know, we were devastated yesterday because you think that you have everything covered, and in this pandemic you find that sometimes things do come up and change the way you might approach something.
Is this really sustainable, that we send home hundreds of children at a time because of one positive case?
Nothing can replace students sitting in front of a teacher, but it has to be safe. And if we are to contain this pandemic with numbers rising as they are right now, I think it would be remiss of anyone to suggest that we're overreacting.
The Academy is determined that school life this term should be as full as possible, even though at the moment nearly 300 pupils can't attend. Wootton Bassett isn't the first school to have to take this step, and it almost certainly won't be the last.
Meanwhile, the Health Secretary has admitted there are operational challenges in the coronavirus testing system after a number of people in the West said they had been unable to get a test. In other cases, people have been told their nearest available test is in Wales, as our political correspondent David Wood has been finding out.
Walk-in testing centres like this new one in Bristol are springing up across the West. Seemingly not exactly busy today, but demand here is up, and some are finding tests hard to come by. Bryony Roberts lives in the city. Her 8-year-old daughter developed a cough this weekend, so must stay at home from school for 2 weeks or until she has a negative test. For 2 days, Bryony tried to get a local one, but had no luck. Today she found one, more than 45 miles away in Cardiff.
All day yesterday, absolutely nothing. Couldn't find anything at all. One thing came up in Warminster, but when you tried to actually get a slot, there were no slots available, and I went right through to December and nothing came up. It just seems like we're not actually getting back to school at all, and it was really upsetting for my daughter. She was really, she was crying earlier at having to go through this.
Why are people still struggling to get a test?
Boris Johnson promised a world-beating test and trace system. It's seen as key to avoiding a second lockdown. He told his cabinet today testing capacity is increasing in the next few weeks and a new lab will open in the Midlands to help process more tests. But Labour say the problems need sorting now, as demand for testing is already increasing.
This is all entirely predictable. It's a catastrophic failing on behalf of the government. We were told it was world-beating and all the other nonsense. We need to stop the headline nonsense. We need to support people locally. They really need to get the communications on this right. Because my experience is that people want to do the right thing. They need to understand what the right thing is. We're going to be living with this for quite some time. We know that now.
Secretary of State.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
So to explain the problem and reassure MPs, the Health Secretary was called to the Commons this lunchtime. He said that more tests are being carried out here than in other European nations, and so far more than 20 million tests have been carried out.
The vast majority of people who use our testing service get a test that is close to home, and the average distance travelled to a test site is now just 5.8 miles, down from 6.4 miles last week. But the whole House knows that there are operational challenges and we're working hard to fix them. We've seen a sharp rise in people coming forward for a test, including those who are not eligible.
More tests and testing centres are promised in the coming weeks, as ministers will have to start deciding who has priority over the available tests.
David Wood with that report. To other news now, and a number of people have been arrested after a group of teenagers were spotted with machetes in Bristol earlier. Police were called to Hengrove Leisure Park this afternoon. At least 2 men are believed to be injured. Police say an investigation is ongoing. The first of 4 funerals held for the victims of a fatal crash in Caen last month will take place this week. Ryan Nelson's funeral will be held on Friday afternoon and people are invited to pay their respects outside Caen Town Hall. Those who plan to go have been asked to respect social distancing guidelines. The family of a 15-year-old boy from Gloucestershire who died after a car crash said he will be fondly remembered. Anthony Springett from Stonehouse was taken to Bristol Children's Hospital after the accident last month but died 2 days later. It was the day before his 16th birthday. Anthony's family said the teenager, who was profoundly deaf, had many challenges to overcome but was always smiling. Now, today marks World Afro Day, when black and mixed-race hair is celebrated not just for how it looks, but what it represents. Afros became popular after the 1960s civil rights movement, when many black people decided to stop trying to imitate the styles of the white establishment. Karam Cooper from Bristol says today is about reminding people of the Afro's cultural significance.
It's funnily enough worse being an adult, especially in places like, pubs, when people have had a drink and stuff. They feel like it's given them an automatic sort of green card to come up and get a handful of hair or stroke it or, get their mates to go and get a picture or whatever. Like, it's treating it as a novelty, which is not nice. Wearing an afro in itself, for me and a lot of people like me, is it's a statement, isn't it, really? So having a World Afro Day that's dedicated to celebrating that and, being proud of that is a really great thing.
To sport now, and in tonight's football, Cheltenham Town have been knocked out of the League Cup. They lost 3-1 at Championship side Millwall. Finn Azaz with the Robins goal. And just before we bring you the weather, we wanted to show you these pictures of performers at Stroud's Gifford's Circus. In a world without coronavirus, they would have been at shows in Las Vegas, but they're still wowing crowds at socially distanced tables in Gloucestershire. Great to see some performances still going ahead safely. Now let's take a look at the region's weather with Kate. Great Western Railway sponsors the ITV West Country weather.
Hello there, good evening. If you're enjoying the fine weather at the moment, you'll be pleased to know there's a little bit more of that to come. Lots of dry weather for the rest of the week. Some sunshine as well, gradually feeling a little bit cooler, but still pretty warm for the time of year. Outside at the moment, dry, some clear skies, but a little bit of low cloud in place as well. Perhaps a bit of mistiness too. And temperatures, as with last night, pretty mild at around 13, 14 degrees. Perhaps a little bit cooler though in the countryside. So waking up tomorrow morning, any mistiness soon clearing, and then we're back to the sunshine once again. I think barely a cloud in the sky tomorrow. Light winds as well, and temperatures rising to around 26 degrees along the south coast through parts of Dorset. Slightly cooler at 24 through parts of Gloucestershire, but hey, still pretty good. And then after that, high pressure still with us, but it drifts ever so slightly, introducing a bit more of a northeasterly airflow. So a little bit breezier by the time we get to Saturday, but still lots of sunshine on the way before then. Bit more cloud perhaps on Saturday, and temperatures gradually cooling off down to around 21 by the weekend.
Great Western Railway sponsors the ITV West Country weather.
Thanks, Kate. That's it from us tonight. Whatever you're doing, have a lovely rest of your evening. Goodbye.